Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown. Today's battle is between Cockjahund's Vampire Counts and Turin's Bretonnia, though he's going by Here We Go. Manfred von Karstein leads the Vampire Counts with the Curse of Undeath, Life Leeching, Sword of Unholy Power, Spirit Leech, Fate of Buna, Invocation of Nehek, Raise Dead, Master of the Black Arts, and Undeath Resurgent. His Necromancer comes in with Master of the Dead, a Scroll of Leeching, and a Scroll of Shielding with no magic. 4 units of Skeleton Warriors, the Cockjahund Stalkers, and 6 units of Skeleton Spearmen add extremely cheap width to the infantry line with anti-large capabilities. 4 units of Graveguard and the Stearnsmen form the main line, expecting weakly armored enemy units, while the Blood Knights are the only large anti-large units brought to the field to minimize the risk against enemy anti-large units. The Bretonnians are led by the Fey Enchantress on her Unicorn with the Blessing of the Lady, Aura of the Lady, Life Bloom, Mist of the Lady, Earthblood, Regrowth, Arcane Conduit, Favor of the Fae, and Chalice of Potions. 2 units of Men-at-Arms with Polearms provide some anti-large armor-piercing strength, with the 4 units of Battle Pilgrims and 3 units of Foot Squires forming the infantry lines. 2 units of Peasant Bowmen with Fire Arrows are a good call in case the enemy brings in units with regeneration like the Stearnsmen, and the Grail Reliquae will make sure nearby units are immune to psychological effects of fighting the undead and have a little leadership boost. Always a great call against the Vampire Counts. Finally, 2 units of Royal Pegasus Knights will push forward and look to get rid of enemy cavalry, or come in with rear and side charges to the front lines, and of course, they're safe from psychological dangers as well. Alright, as always, we're going to start with a conversation about deployment, and while Bretonnia keeps it relatively simple, the Vampire Counts definitely try something clever here with some sneaky, spooky, scary skeletons. Let's start, though, with their main line over here. We have the straight line of the Graveguard with the Stearnsmen right in the center, so a little bit stronger in the middle there. Manfred von Karstein and the Necromancer are both right behind them, with the Blood Knights all the way back here. So if Bretonnia gets a little adventurous, decides to push forward and hunt down Manfred with some flying units, for example, the Blood Knights are able to push in nice and early and shut that nonsense down immediately. So that's the overall core army there. And meanwhile, on either flank, as you can see, we have 3 units of Skeleton Spearmen, and on the left we have 3 units of Skeleton Warriors, and on the right we have the Cockjahund Stalkers and another unit of Skeleton Warriors. So these guys are off to the side, using the terrain, using the trees to push forward and come in from the sides, push in from the rears, and basically create a very nice pincer maneuver. So very interesting deployment there. Let's see what Bretonnia's got. So again, relatively simple on this side of the field. On either end we have these Foot Squires, and in the center as well we have these Foot Squires, and in between them we have a pair of Battle Pilgrims apiece. So again, we've got some frenzy in there, we've got some nice anti-infantry armor-piercing damage as well, just scattered about with the Grail Reliquae in the center there, again, providing that extra morale and psychological support in the center, in a radius around it, with the Fey Enchantress there as well. Again, she is sort of like a Mortis engine. She's got the Mist of the Lady, able to damage enemy units with trickle damage as time goes on. So again, a central location there for her as well. Right behind that front line, we do have the Peasant Bowmen with their Fire Arrows scattered a little bit, and that's always a good call, especially against the Vampire Counts, because if they decide to raise the undead, bring some zombies onto the field, one unit won't be able to bog both of these guys down, and they can actually support each other if one of them gets engaged. Then, all the way back here on either flank, you'll see we do have the Men-at-Arms with Polearms. These guys are anti-large and they're armor-piercing, so if any Blood Knights or Crypt Horrors come crashing through, these guys will be able to push in, intercept those incoming charges, and shut the enemy large units down. While all the way up front here, we do have the Royal Pegasus Knights, both of them, again, curious, capable of pushing forward, getting some initial, rear charges or side charges in, picking off enemy leadership or engaging, potential Blood Knights or something like that to get some nice early damage in, of course. Now, with all that said and done, let's take a look at how this breaks down. Now, as you can see, instantaneously, we've got the Royal Pegasus Knights pushing forward. They want to get some scouting done, get some early vision on the field, and at the same time, we do have the Skeleton Warriors and the Skeleton Spearmen pushing forward as well. These guys are very slow-moving, so they do have to advance right away for this entire plan to play out. And you'll see as the Royal Pegasus Knights push forward, they decide to just go down this central lane here. They don't actually go about exploring, and that's a very crucial mistake, especially on this map. You want to look at what's happening, and you'll see this early adventurous attitude is punished basically right away with the Fate of Buna coming down on these guys and causing a significant amount of damage. So they do pull away. They decide to get away from here because the Blood Knights are back there as well, so they're not really able to dive down anywhere and cause any hurt. Meanwhile, you'll see these guys are basically able to push all the way to the other end of the map, more or less, and get some surround setup, and it's very risky, of course, because there are these little pockets where they could have been spotted, but they've overall been pretty safe, and now they're basically at a point where they can actually push forward and surprise the enemy and cause a little bit of disarray. And you'll see the Royal Pegasus Knights here not entirely confident enough to pull down with the engagement. Over here we do have Master of the Black Arts going on just so that Manfred's ready to cast when the time does come, and you'll see now these guys are pushing out of the trees, so the Bretonians are now very much aware of what's going on as these guys are poking out of the trees as well. So on both sides, these guys are pushing forth, and up here you'll see these guys are still pushing out and around. So this is evolving from a pincer maneuver into a full encirclement as these guys as well pushing up and around this final mound there. And you'll see over here, good call, pushing the Battle Pilgrims. Let's slow it down for a second here. The Battle Pilgrims are being sent forth to chase after these rather lowly Vampire Count units, so the Foot Squires can stay up front here and protect against the Graveguard, who are a much more threatening unit and a more fitting target for the Foot Squires. At the same time, you'll see we're having something nice here by the Vampire Counts. They're actually baiting these Battle Pilgrims further into this choke point, so you'll see they were actually pushing forward, and now they're being commanded to fall back, so these Battle Pilgrims are, you know, unable to be supported by flanking large units and things like that. So these guys now pushing in, trying to engage these Battle Pilgrims, all the while on the right side over here as well, you'll see these Battle Pilgrims engaging the Skeleton Spearmen while the Graveguard are now pushing forward. Now, both of these Peasant Bowmen should have been firing at the Sternsmen. They are regenerating, so they do have that extra susceptibility to fire damage, so that should have been the focus of both of their fire. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see the Fey Enchantress does dive in to these Skeleton Spearmen while all these guys are able to come around that mound, and same thing over here, coming around this mound completely uncontested, no one there to stop them, and the Graveguard as well pushing forward very aggressively. You'll see these Battle Pilgrims are falling back to protect against any raised dead that might happen while these Foot Squires push in and prepare to hold the line up front here. The Fey Enchantress as well responding to this, coming up to the front lines and trying to get ready to provide support however necessary. While back here you'll see we do have the gaps closing as this full encirclement does continue. Another Fate of Yuna does go down on the Royal Pegasus Knights, making sure they take a fair amount of damage as they push through, and finally the Peasant Bowmen here opening shots off at the Sternsmen, causing a decent amount of damage. I think some of those hits actually targeting the Necromancer, but a lot of those arrows are hitting the Sternsmen, so that is working out for them. Meanwhile, over here you'll see the Vampire Counts are actually having a tough time. The Skeleton Spearmen aren't able to beat the Battle Pilgrims, and that's a fact for sure. That wasn't going to happen, but at least they were able to distract that unit, keep them over there. These Skeleton Warriors could have been sent in to provide some support, but over here as well you'll see we have some of these Skeleton Spearmen and Skeleton Warriors diving into the single unit of Battle Pilgrims. Could have been sent around just to shut that down a lot faster. And over here as well, these Men-at-Arms with polearms are being shut down by these Skeleton Warriors, just pinned in place completely. While over here you'll see this engagement does continue between the Königstein Stalkers and the Skeleton Spearmen and the Battle Pilgrims. Meanwhile, these guys are still coming around the corner there, while that range fire does continue into the Sternsmen or the Necromancer, and the Royal Pegasus Knights, meanwhile, you can see these guys hit by the Fate of Unit have taken a lot of damage, basically have a quarter of their health left, but decide to take on the Blood Knights. A very dangerous situation there, and you'll see Manfred does pull down as well to get involved himself, and meanwhile we have some great micromanagement happening here. You'll see as the Chalice of Potions does get activated, very quickly these guys are micromanaged, the Sternsmen as well as the Necromancer and the Graveguard over here, pulled aside, and as that bombardment comes down, all it does is hurt the Foot Squires, causes a tremendous amount of damage, and just breaks those guys apart, and then again, these guys are brought back into the center to continue the onslaught, as back here these Skeleton Warriors are able to get through and get a rear charge onto these Foot Squires. Earthblood is trying to go in there and provide some support to these guys to keep them alive, but that's just not enough. Meanwhile, back here you can see as well these Skeleton Spearmen are able to push through into these Peasant Bowmen, while these Skeleton Warriors as well pushing through and trying to get multiple engagements in from multiple sides. Back here as well, these Skeleton Warriors finding a way to get around and into the back lines of Bretonnia, while over here these Skeleton Spearmen still alive, still keeping these Battle Pilgrims preoccupied. And in some ways, actually, though I mentioned earlier that these Skeleton Warriors should have been sent in, keeping these guys back does force these Battle Pilgrims to stick in this location. They're not able to take care of these Skeleton Spearmen and then pull back. They have to stay there unless these Skeleton Warriors are just given this alley to enter through. So, you know, good call keeping those guys in reserve in retrospect here. Now, back here you'll notice as well these Skeleton Spearmen finally deciding to disengage and get in from a better angle, while these Skeleton Warriors and these Skeleton Spearmen completely take care of these Peasant Bowmen. Back here, meanwhile, you'll see the Blood Knights are able to take care of both of these Royal Pegasus Knights units, even though they are taking a fair amount of damage. Scroll of Shielding does go down on them to keep them alive, resisting that damage. Invocation of the Head keeping them alive as well, but Manfred causing a lot of hurt there. These Skeleton Warriors as well, raised from the dead to provide some support, of course, and both Royal Pegasus Knights have been completely taken care of. You know, over here, these Peasant Bowmen as well completely shut down, while these guys are able to sneak by and stay alive, but these Skeleton Warriors do disengage, and they push down instead to the front lines to shut that down as quickly as possible and make sure these Foot Squires don't continue fighting. Meanwhile, back here you'll see these Skeleton Warriors and Skeleton Spearmen able to pour through these rear entry points and just cause a significant amount of damage. Meanwhile, over here the Königstein Stalkers and those Skeleton Spearmen able to push through once more and just shatter these guys completely. These Battle Pilgrims do not wish to fight anymore, while over here we do have Earthblood going down, just trying to keep these guys alive, just trying to keep the Fey Enchantress alive. The Foot Squires, of course, willing to give up now, routing while the Blood Knights are doing some cleanup duty here, finishing off these foot squads and these peasant bowmen as they do run away, shattering those peasant bowmen. And back here, these skeleton warriors again, just waiting for an opportunity and a place to engage, deciding to go after these men-at-arms with polearms. And take a look at their leadership, how quickly it does drop as the skeleton warriors there get that nice rear charge. And these battle pilgrims, meanwhile, occupied by these skeleton warriors, so they were kept in reserve so they could be pushed in once the skeleton warriors were taken care of. And there you have it, these battle pilgrims completely useless for the core of this battle. Meanwhile, in the center here, you'll see the Fey Enchantress is taking a lot of hurt. Spirit Leech going down. Manfred is chasing after her as well, causing a lot of pain. So the Fey Enchantress is very close to dying, as you can see, having done very little work. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see at the back lines, though these guys are falling apart, these Skeleton Spearmen, they maintained those Battle Pilgrim lines. They kept them back there, made sure they couldn't get involved in the front. And meanwhile, up front here, the Foot Squires are nowhere to be seen. They've all left, basically. The Fey Enchantress does fall. The Grail Reliquae falling back there to try and provide some support. I lied. There's one unit of Foot Squires trying to get some help in there. And meanwhile, these Royal Pegasus Knights just having a hard time engaging. They're so horribly hurt, and fear is an important factor at this point. Not literally in terms of psychologically, but the low morale is going to be extremely dangerous for them because they're very quick to give up at this point. Meanwhile, the Blood Knights are getting a nice rear charge into these Battle Pilgrims, making sure these Skeleton Warriors are able to win that engagement. The Royal Pegasus Knights decide to respond by diving in themselves and try to take care of these Blood Knights, but Manfred is pushing in alongside these Skeleton Warriors and the Necromancer there as well, just trying to get some support into that engagement. Invocation of Nehek goes down, keeping these Blood Knights alive still. They've done a decent amount of work for only one single lone unit of cavalry. And over here, meanwhile, you'll see we've just got a full surround going on, just shattering these Bretonnians one by one. Up here, these Battle Pilgrims now trying to come down here. Bringing a rear charge is going to make a huge difference, of course, but at this point, it is far too little, far too late. These guys all start to fall apart, and a Pyrrhic victory for the Vampire Counts. And that was a very inventive Vampire Count build, deployment, and overall play. We're so used to seeing the Mortis Engine, plenty of raised dead, crypt horrors, and a mosh pit. But here we have an army consisting largely of skeleton warriors and spearmen, sneaking through and performing a pincer maneuver, evolving into a full encirclement. The plan was executed almost flawlessly, and the Vampire Counts did very well to tear apart the Bretonnian forces to ensure that they weren't able to support each other. There was some great micromanagement to highlight as well. The way that Chalice of Potions was dodged was beautiful to watch, and while Bretonnia did the best it could, I don't think they expected the size of the Vampire Count army or the full surround exactly how it happened. And that's exactly why scouting early on is very important, especially on a map like this. Scouting with those Royal Pegasus Knights with that airborne mobility that was gifted to Bretonnia would have made a huge difference, as it would have allowed Bretonnia to make significantly more informed decisions on their approach down the field. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and highlighting such amazing plays from the community is always a great time. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.